Hey guys, tonight we drift back in time, not with trumpets or marble statues gleaming in the sun, but with your eyes half open, standing barefoot on cold stone as morning creeps into ancient Rome. The sky is pale, the air already busy, and before you even know where you are, something damp splashes near your feet. You pause, listening. Carts creak. Someone shouts. Somewhere close by, bread is already burning. This is Rome at dawn, and you're in it now. No guidebook, no immunity, no pause button. There's a strange thrill in that, right up until you realize you probably won't survive this. Not in the way you imagine, at least. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Rome is waking up, and somewhere across the world, you're winding down. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in a narrow street, one of thousands that knit the city together like cracked veins. The buildings lean inward, as if curious about you. They're tall, uneven, and patched with generations of repairs. Above you, laundry hangs from ropes, fluttering lazily, and you instinctively duck even though nothing is falling yet. That instinct will serve you well here. The first thing you notice is the smell. Rome doesn't gently wake up, it announces itself. Wood smoke mixes with sour wine, stale oil, and something unmistakably human. Chamber pots have been emptied overnight, and while there are laws about where waste should go, laws in reality are old enemies in this city. You step carefully, because the street is less a road and more a suggestion of one, muddy, rutted, and glistening in places you'd rather not think about. This is the capital of an empire, yes, but it's also home to over 1 million people at its peak, all stacked together without plumbing as you know it. That's the mainstream historical fact to gently settle into your mind. Ancient Rome was one of the largest cities in the world, and it reached that size long before modern sanitation. Your nose understands this before your brain does. As light spills between rooftops, the city comes alive around you. Bakers are already at work, slaves moving in practiced silence, carrying sacks of grain heavier than you expect. Somewhere, a rooster crows, stubbornly insisting on rural traditions in an urban sprawl. You hear Latin spoken in quick bursts, not the polished kind from textbooks, but street Latin, fast, clipped, full of slang. You don't understand it, but the tone tells you enough. Everyone is in a hurry. You try to place yourself. You're not dressed like anyone else. That's a problem. Clothing here isn't just fashion, it's a billboard advertising your status. Tunics vary by length and color, and certain stripes mean power, citizenship, or money. You feel suddenly exposed, like you've shown up to an exclusive event wearing pajamas. No one confronts you yet, but glances linger longer than you'd like. The sun creeps higher, warming the stone beneath your feet. Rome is built on layers, older streets buried beneath newer ones, temples repurposed, walls recycled. You're literally walking on history, and that's not just poetic. Scholars still argue whether certain roads beneath your feet date back to the early Republic or were later renovations disguised as ancient tradition. Rome loves pretending it's older than it is, even when it actually is very old. A dog darts past you, ribs visible, chasing something you can't see. Stray animals are common here, thriving on scraps and chaos. You step aside just in time as a cart thunders by, wheels screaming against stone. There are no sidewalks, no traffic rules you'd recognize, just an unspoken hierarchy. Big things don't stop, and small things get out of the way. You are currently a very small thing. You realize quickly that surviving a single day in ancient Rome isn't about gladiators or emperors. It's about awareness. About watching where you step, what you touch, and who you accidentally look at for too long. Eye contact can be interpreted as challenge or insult. Best to keep your gaze soft, unfocused, like you're half asleep. That's fitting, actually. From somewhere nearby comes the sound of running water. You follow it instinctively, rounding a corner to see a public fountain, fed by one of Rome's aqueducts. This is one of their greatest achievements, and even half awake, you can sense the pride behind it. Water flows constantly, clear and cool, spilling into basins worn smooth by countless hands. The quirky detail here, the one that tends to surprise people, is that much of this water travels through pipes lined with lead. The Romans know it's not ideal, but the convenience wins. You hesitate, already aware that your modern instincts don't quite belong here. People gather at the fountain, filling jars, gossiping softly. This is social media, Roman style. News travels mouth to mouth, faster than you'd expect. Fires, executions, scandals, all whispered before breakfast. You catch a few words. A collapsed building, a new tax, a magistrate in trouble. None of it involves you, and that's exactly how you want it. The light is stronger now, and heat promises to follow. You can feel the city's rhythm settling into place, like a heartbeat you didn't notice at first. Somewhere far off, a horn sounds. Shops begin to open, wooden shutters creaking upward. Life is happening whether you're ready or not. You take a slow breath and let your shoulders drop. This is overwhelming, but you're not here to rush. You're here to observe, to drift through the day one careful step at a time. The dangers will reveal themselves soon enough, but for now, Rome is simply waking up, and you're awake with it. As you stand there, listening to water spill endlessly into stone, you realize something important. Survival here isn't heroic, it's mundane. It's about blending in, staying quiet, and making it from one sunrise to the next. And as the day stretches out ahead of you, long and uncertain, you begin to understand why even a single ordinary day in ancient Rome could be more than enough. You start moving because standing still in Rome feels like an invitation to trouble. The street nudges you forward, narrow and uneven, sloping slightly as if it has its own opinion about where you should go. Your feet learn quickly that these stones weren't laid for comfort. They're polished smooth by centuries of traffic, slick in places, jagged in others. You place each step carefully, already understanding that a twisted ankle here isn't an inconvenience, it's a sentence. The street fills fast. Rome doesn't do personal space. Bodies press past you, shoulders brush, elbows bump, and no one apologizes. Apologies are a luxury for people with time and safety. A man carrying baskets of figs cuts in front of you, the fruit overripe and splitting, sweet juice dripping onto the ground. Behind him, a woman balances a clay pot on her head with the kind of ease you only get from lifelong practice. You try not to stare. Above you, the buildings loom closer together than before. Some stretch 5 or 6 stories high, which feels unsettling when you notice the cracks spidering along their walls. These are insulae, apartment blocks that house most of Rome's population. The mainstream historical fact quietly humming in the background is that the majority of Romans live like this, renting small, crowded rooms in buildings that are notoriously unsafe. Fires are common. Collapses happen. You glance up instinctively and immediately regret it as dust drifts down into your eyes. The street sounds are layered. Iron-rimmed wheels grind against stone. Hooves clatter. Somewhere metal clangs sharply, followed by a curse. You don't know what was dropped, but you know better than to investigate. A cart barrels toward you, pulled by a pair of oxen that smell exactly like you'd expect. The driver doesn't slow down. You flatten yourself against a wall, heart ticking faster, as the cart squeezes past with inches to spare. Your sleeve brushes wet stone, and you decide not to ask questions about the moisture. This is when you realize Rome doesn't believe in zoning. Workshops, homes, shops, and taverns all share the same streets. A blacksmith's hammer rings out just a few doors down from a bakery. Sparks fly, landing dangerously close to dry wood. You imagine how easily this could all go wrong, and you're not imagining, it often does. Scholars still argue whether Rome's frequent urban fires were mostly due to overcrowding, open flames, or sheer bad luck compounded by poor building regulation. Either way, you don't linger near the sparks. You pass a doorway where a man is sweeping something suspiciously chunky into the street. He doesn't look at you. You don't look at him. This is an unspoken agreement you'll make many times today. The gutter running along the road carries away liquids of various origins, slowly, reluctantly. It's not exactly sewage as you understand it, more like a communal shrug in stone form. A sudden shout makes you flinch. Two men are arguing loudly, faces red, hands waving. A small crowd gathers with interest, not concern. Conflict here is entertainment until it isn't. You edge around them, keeping your head down. You remember what you sensed earlier, awareness over bravery. As you walk, you notice carvings scratched into the walls. Names, insults, crude drawings, advertisements. This is graffiti, Roman style, and it's everywhere. One promises love, another threatens violence. A third advertises a lost sandal. The quirky detail that makes you exhale a quiet laugh is realizing that some of these messages are political slogans, scratched by supporters who couldn't afford more official displays. Even here, even now, people are shouting into the stone, hoping someone will listen. The street opens briefly into a wider thoroughfare, and the noise doubles. This is a main road, built for movement, for armies and commerce. You feel smaller here. Carts line up. Drivers shouting over one another, trying to force their way through. There's a rhythm to it, push, pause, surge. You learn to move with it, slipping through gaps when they appear. Something splashes near your feet again. This time you see it. Water, maybe, maybe not, tipped from an upper window without warning. There are rules about shouting a warning before emptying a chamber pot, but enforcement is optimistic. You glance up too late to identify the culprit. The window shutters are already closed. You step aside, heart thudding, and silently thank whatever luck you have left. The sun climbs higher, and heat begins to gather between the walls. Air moves poorly here. You feel it settle on your skin, heavy and damp. You're already tired, and the day has barely started. Rome doesn't ease you into itself. It tests you immediately, to see if you're paying attention. You notice small shrines tucked into corners, little niches with flickering lamps and offerings. A pinch of grain, a wilted flower. These are for the household gods, the Lares, watching over the street. People pause briefly, touch the stone, murmur a few words. You mimic the motion, just in case. Superstition here is less belief and more habit, a layer of protection you don't question. A boy darts past you, laughing, chased by another child. They weave through the crowd effortlessly, born into this chaos. You smile despite yourself. It's easy to forget that this is a living city, not just a collection of hazards. People grow up here. They fall in love. They complain about the weather. Still, the risks are constant. A loose tile skitters from a roof and shatters nearby. No one reacts. This is normal. You step around the shards and keep going. You're learning the most important skill Rome demands, adaptation. As the street narrows again, you feel that earlier instinct return, the one that told you to keep moving. You adjust your pace, breathing slowly, letting the city carry you forward. You're not safe, not really, but you're surviving. And for ancient Rome, for one ordinary morning on unforgiving streets, that's already an achievement. Your throat tightens before you consciously feel thirsty. It's subtle at first, just a dry awareness as you keep moving through the streets, heat beginning to cling to you like a second tunic you never asked for. Rome makes you earn every basic comfort, even water. Especially water. You follow the sound again, the steady, reassuring rush you noticed earlier. Water is life here, and everyone knows where to find it. Public fountains dot the city like dependable anchors. You arrive at one now, carved stone worn smooth by centuries of hands, its basin constantly overflowing. The water arrives through aqueducts that stretch for miles, gravity-fed marvels that even in your half-sleepy state feel impressive. This is the mainstream historical fact gently drifting into view. Rome's aqueduct system is one of the greatest engineering achievements of the ancient world, delivering millions of gallons of water into the city every single day. You step closer, joining the loose cluster of people waiting their turn. There's no line, just a shared understanding of proximity and patience. A woman fills a jug, corks it, and balances it on her hip. A slave kneels to drink directly from the flow, cupping his hands, eyes closed in brief relief. You hesitate, modern instincts buzzing with warnings. But thirst wins arguments quickly. You scoop the water and drink. It's cool, shockingly so, and for a moment, everything else fades. The street noise dulls. Your shoulders loosen. This, at least, feels safe. And mostly, it is. The aqueduct water is generally cleaner than river water, constantly moving, less likely to stagnate. That's the comforting version of the story Romans like to tell themselves. The less comforting version slips in quietly. Many of the pipes carrying this water are lined with lead. The quirky detail, the one that historians love to argue over late at night, is that the Romans absolutely knew lead wasn't great for you. They just didn't agree on how bad it was, or whether it mattered enough to redesign an entire infrastructure. Some scholars still argue whether widespread lead exposure contributed meaningfully to health problems among Rome's elite, or if that idea is exaggerated by modern hindsight. Either way, you swallow and decide not to think too hard about it. You have bigger problems today. You watch how people interact with the fountain. This isn't just a utility, it's a meeting place. News drifts through the air along with the spray. Someone mentions a magistrate passing through yesterday. Someone else complains about a neighbor stealing water after dark. You learn quickly that access to water is technically public, but practically political. Certain fountains flow stronger than others. Some neighborhoods get priority during dry spells. Complaints are common. Solutions are rare. As you step away, refreshed but not entirely reassured, you notice smaller channels carved into the streets, guiding overflow away. The water doesn't disappear neatly. It wanders, picking up whatever the road offers. Dust, ash, things best left unnamed. You're reminded that clean water and dirty water often occupy the same few feet of space here, separated more by intention than design. You feel energized enough to keep moving, but thirst has made you alert to another truth. Staying hydrated in ancient Rome is a daily task, not a background assumption. There are no bottles in your bag, no taps waiting at home. You have to plan your movements around fountains, wells, and public access points. Miss one, and the day becomes much harder. The sun climbs higher, light reflecting off pale stone, making you squint. You wipe your brow and feel grit beneath your fingers. Dust settles on everything here. It coats skin, clothes, food. You start to understand why baths are such a big deal, why they become social centers later in the day. But for now, water is functional, precious in its own quiet way. You pass a well, older than the fountain, darker and less inviting. A man draws water slowly, muscles straining. Well water is dependable, but not always trusted. Some taste of minerals. Others sit too long. People argue about which sources are safer, which are cursed, which are blessed by the gods. Superstition flows as freely as anything else. You pause again, listening to the city. Somewhere nearby, a pipe leaks, dripping steadily into a crack in the stone. No one fixes it. Water loss is constant here, accepted as part of the system. Rome has so much water that inefficiency becomes invisible. It's a strange luxury, and it hides fragility beneath abundance. A child splashes through a shallow runnel, laughing until a sharp word from a parent snaps him back. Water play is fine, but only to a point. Illness travels easily. You hear coughing nearby, deep, persistent. You don't linger. You can't help noticing how many people look tired, worn, older than their years. Hydration helps, but it doesn't solve everything. You take one last look at the fountain before moving on. The water keeps flowing, indifferent to who drinks and who doesn't. It has been doing this long before you arrived, and it will continue long after you're gone. That thought is oddly calming. Your thirst is eased for now, your steps steadier. But the lesson sticks with you as you move back into the street's slow churn. In ancient Rome, survival depends on noticing the basics. Water isn't guaranteed. Clean isn't absolute. And even the greatest achievements come with quiet costs that you only feel over time. You walk on, carrying that awareness lightly, letting it settle into the background hum of the day, another small adjustment in a city that constantly asks you to adapt. Your stomach reminds you of itself with a low, unimpressed murmur. Water helps, but it doesn't count as breakfast, and Rome expects you to fend for yourself early. Morning food isn't a leisurely affair here. It's practical, quick, and often eaten while standing, leaning, or walking. You follow your nose again, because bread is impossible to ignore. A bakery comes into view, its doorway blackened with soot, heat rolling out in soft waves. Inside, men work shirtless, muscles slick with sweat, sliding flat rounds of dough into an oven that looks more like a cave than a kitchen appliance. This is one of Rome's great quiet miracles: bread production on an industrial scale. The mainstream historical fact easing into your morning is that Rome provides subsidized grain to hundreds of thousands of citizens. The grain dole, the annona, keeps the city fed and calm. Hungry people riot. Fed people complain instead. You're not officially part of that system, and you feel it. A line forms, loose and shifting, people clutching coins or tokens. Bread is cheap by Roman standards, but cheap is relative. You exchange a small coin and receive a coarse, flat loaf, still warm. It's heavier than you expect, dense, made mostly from wheat or barley, depending on availability. You tear off a piece and chew. It's bland, gritty, and strangely comforting. The grit isn't imagination. Roman flour is often ground with stone mills that shed tiny particles. Teeth here wear down fast. The quirky detail that drifts into your mind is that many Romans have noticeably worn teeth by middle age, not from sugar, but from bread itself. You chew carefully, suddenly aware of your jaw. You notice people dipping bread into things: olive oil, watered wine, sometimes a thin porridge. Breakfast isn't about variety, it's about energy. A laborer needs calories. A shopkeeper needs enough to stand all day. You're somewhere in between, trying to look like you belong. A vendor nearby sells olives from a basket, their skins wrinkled, scent sharp. You trade another coin and add a few to your meal. Salty, intense, they make you thirsty again, but they feel nourishing. You understand why olive oil is everywhere here, in food, lamps, medicine. It's liquid survival. As you eat, you watch the bakery rhythm continue. Bread goes in. Bread comes out. Ash is brushed aside. Someone burns their hand and doesn't stop working. Time is measured in loaves. The heat is relentless, and you step back into the street, blinking, loaf tucked under your arm like something precious. You pass a small stall selling cheese, pale and soft, flies already interested. You hesitate. Cheese is common, but freshness is a gamble. So is meat. So is almost everything. There are no expiration dates, no refrigeration. Food safety is a daily negotiation between hunger and caution. Scholars still argue whether the average Roman diet was healthier than later medieval diets, or if the risks of contamination and spoilage balanced out the benefits of fresh, local production. You decide not to test the theory with questionable cheese. Further along, a man ladles out pulls, a thick porridge made from grain and water. It's cheap, filling, and deeply unexciting. You accept a bowl and eat slowly, the texture somewhere between soup and paste. This is old food, traditional food, the kind Romans tell themselves built the Republic. It tastes like persistence. Around you, breakfast happens in fragments. No one lingers. People eat and move, chew and walk, talk with full mouths. A woman feeds a child a softened piece of bread, her fingers quick and practiced. A man argues with a vendor over weight, accusing him of cheating. The vendor swears by the gods that the scale is honest. Everyone knows it probably isn't. You finish eating and feel steadier, but not energized in a modern sense. There's no sugar rush, no coffee jolt. Caffeine exists only in the future. You rely on habit and momentum. Rome doesn't give you boosts, it gives you sustenance. As you wipe your hands on your tunic, you notice how quickly crumbs disappear. Birds dart in. A dog noses closer until a sharp word sends it away. Nothing is wasted here for long. Even leftovers have competition. The smell of garum drifts from somewhere nearby, fermented fish sauce, beloved and infamous. It's not exactly breakfast food, but it finds its way into everything. The scent is powerful, divisive. Some adore it, others tolerate it. You're not sure where you land, but you're glad it's not on your bread this morning. You take a final sip of watered wine from a shared jug offered by a passing acquaintance you didn't mean to make. It's weak, more symbolic than intoxicating, but safer than stagnant water. Drinking wine early is normal here. Sobriety is flexible when sanitation is not. With your hunger quieted, you feel more capable of facing the day. Food doesn't make you safe, but it makes you functional. That's enough for now. You step back into the flow of the street, the taste of grain still on your tongue, carrying with you the understanding that in ancient Rome, breakfast isn't about pleasure. It's about survival, repeated daily, one coarse bite at a time. The loaf under your arm grows heavier as you walk, not because it gains mass, but because awareness weighs on you. Housing in Rome is more than where you sleep, it's where you live your daily hazards. You glance up at the towering insulae lining the street. They're uneven stacks of brick and timber, some 5 or 6 stories tall, balconies jutting out like cautious fingers. The higher you go, the more precarious life feels. You notice cracks running along the walls, thin at first, then widening like spider legs. Fires and collapses are common in these buildings. The mainstream historical fact that filters into your mind is that insulae are often cheaply built to maximize rental profit. Ground floor apartments are desirable, safer, quieter. Higher floors are cheaper, riskier, but many residents can only afford them. You shiver at the thought of being 3 stories up when a storm hits or a fire sparks below. As you continue down the street, you pass staircases barely wide enough for one person at a time. You imagine living in one of the upper rooms, hauling water, dodging debris, trying not to disturb neighbors. Scholars still argue whether the city's regulations, like limits on building height, were ever truly enforced, or if they existed mostly on paper. Reality seems harsher than law here. You glance at a doorway and see a crowd of neighbors, spilling out as if the building itself is exhaling. Children dart around bare feet. Women carry heavy baskets, men sweep soot and dust. The air smells of smoke, cooking, and a faint but persistent dampness from leaky roofs. You step carefully, noting the uneven ground and the constant risk of slipping or being hit by something falling. The quirky detail sneaks into your awareness. Balconies aren't just for leisure. They're trash chutes. Anything unwanted, food scraps, broken pottery, even water, is casually emptied onto the street below. You dodge a dripping heap of who knows what and wonder if anyone is ever surprised. The insulae have entrances that hint at hierarchy. A grander doorway suggests a wealthier tenant, while a narrow, patched entry screams poverty. You realize quickly that living here isn't just about walls and roof, it's a constant negotiation of space, privacy, and safety. The closer to the street, the more vulnerable you are to crime. The higher you live, the less convenient it is to fetch necessities. No choice seems perfect. You hear a shout and turn just in time to see a cart crash into the base of a building. The driver curses, the horse panics, and a heap of pottery shatters. The tenants mutter but do little. This is normal. Fire hazards, structural weaknesses, and accidents are background noise. You step aside, loaf in hand, silently counting your blessings. Inside some insulae, stairwells are dark and narrow, the walls blackened from oil lamps or previous fires. Floors sag in the middle. You imagine living here, waking to the creak of neighbors above and below, hoping your floor holds, hoping the roof doesn't collapse during a storm. Sleep is precious but precarious. In a small courtyard, children play with improvised toys, sticks, scraps of cloth, anything they can safely, or unsafely, toss. You smile faintly, watching their agility. These kids learn early. Life in an insula is rigorous training. You begin to understand why mortality was higher in the city than in the countryside. Survival isn't heroic, it's mundane, learned step by step. You pass a rooftop terrace, accessible only via a rickety stair. A family tends herbs and vegetables in makeshift pots. Small victories of sustenance in a precarious vertical world. The smell of herbs, thyme, mint, perhaps sage, mingles with the city's other scents. You inhale cautiously, savoring the tiny reprieve. A fire bell, or something like one, sounds, though it's hard to distinguish from everyday clatter. Smoke curls from a nearby insula, and neighbors gather, shouting instructions. The scene is chaotic, yet the city continues around it. Life doesn't stop for emergencies here. The quirky detail hits. Romans have a form of fire brigade, but it's more about bribery and contracts than efficiency. You wonder if anyone actually survives without luck. As midday approaches, the sun climbs high, beating down on clay tiles. The insulae cast long shadows across the streets, offering brief respite. You step into one, grateful for the shade, noticing a neighbor quietly fixing a crack with clay and straw. Maintenance is constant. No one is immune from the slow decay of living stacked above hundreds of other people. You pause, loaf tucked under your arm, taking it all in. The height, the hazards, the smells, the noise. Housing in Rome isn't just a roof over your head, it's a daily puzzle of survival, balance, and attention. You realize that every step you take outside mirrors the delicate negotiations inside. Structure and chaos coexist, layered as tightly as the buildings themselves. The street continues to bustle. You resume walking, more aware of precarious ledges, uneven steps, and the constant movement of the city around you. Rome has taught you something fundamental. Your home may protect you, but only barely. It's a fragile shield in a city that is always awake, always active, and always testing its inhabitants. You pause at a widening of the street where steam rises, not from bread ovens, but from another kind of public ritual, the baths. The scent is warm, earthy, faintly medicinal, mixed with smoke and wet stone. Rome loves its baths, and for good reason. They are hygiene, social life, and escape all rolled into one steamy package. But before you picture serene relaxation, remember, you're a stranger here. Everything that looks safe can be complicated. You step closer and watch people entering, shedding tunics, slipping into shallow basins. Public baths are more than a bathhouse. They are a rotating theater of human life. Men of all ages mingle, gossip, exercise, and negotiate deals. Women have their own spaces, though less grand. The mainstream historical fact eases into your consciousness. Baths are central to Roman daily routine. For many, they are essential for cleanliness, health, and social status. Without them, you risk not just odor but reputation. The quirky detail that makes you exhale quietly. Some baths have elaborate heating systems called hypocausts, where floors are raised and hot air circulates underneath. You imagine stepping carefully, feeling the heat, realizing someone had to tend that furnace all day. The effort is invisible, but the warmth is immediate. You step into the entrance, careful to keep your coins and belongings secure. A slave tends the door, collecting fees and murmuring instructions you mostly don't understand. You follow the motion of the crowd, imitating the locals, and find yourself in a shallow pool, warm water lapping gently at your ankles. Already, the tension in your shoulders eases. Conversation floats around you. Small talk, gossip, complaints. A man jokes loudly about a neighbor stealing firewood, drawing laughter. A boy demonstrates a new wrestling move on his friend, both slipping and sliding. Life is absurd, persistent, and surprisingly human here. Scholars still argue whether these bathhouses served primarily hygienic purposes or were social stages for networking and influence. Either way, the answer is irrelevant to you. You're here to survive the sensory overload. You notice hygiene rituals that are unexpected. Strigils scrape skin, oils are applied liberally, and sweat is considered cleansing. The water smells faintly of minerals, sometimes of fish, but you get used to it. A woman near you rubs her body with scented oil, while a man beside her works the sweat off his skin with practiced movements. You realize this is intimacy without romance, a social norm that modern sensibilities might misread. Children dart around edges, laughing and squealing, unbothered by the general heat and chaos. You keep to a corner, trying to appear competent and calm. One of the odd quirks of Roman baths is that temperature is a gradient: caldarium, tepidarium, frigidarium, hot, warm, cold. People move slowly, testing each. The contrast shocks your senses, but you follow along, dipping toes carefully into warmer water first. A man enters, rubbing a mixture of oil and dirt across his body. He grins at no one in particular, loudly claiming it clears skin and strengthens muscles. The others murmur approval or challenge him. You nod, pretending understanding. Quirky habits abound here, from public gossip to bizarre rituals of bathing and scraping, and you are absorbing it all as quickly as possible. Steam rises, curling around pillars and across your vision. The noise of the street is replaced by sloshing water, the scrape of strigils, and low laughter. You take a deep breath, letting it calm your senses. This is one of the few places in the city where the chaotic noise feels like white noise, soothing despite the oddities. Even hygiene has risks. Slippery floors, minor scuffles, and water of questionable purity lurk in every corner. You tread carefully, noting that survival isn't just about avoiding disease, it's about observing, blending, and not drawing attention. A small cut, a scrape, or an overheated argument could be enough to turn this brief escape into a minor crisis. As you leave, water dripping from your hair and tunic, you carry with you the paradox of the baths: cleanliness mixed with risk, social connection tangled with exposure. It's a lesson in cautious immersion. Rome rewards participation but punishes ignorance. You realize that just as you needed water earlier, you needed this, both nourishment for the body and preparation for navigating a city that demands constant awareness. Exiting into the sun, your skin sticky and scented with oil, you pause for a moment. Life in the baths is a temporary reprieve, a chance to reset. Yet, the city waits immediately outside, relentless in its sounds, smells, and hazards. You tuck the lessons into memory. Observe, adapt, and never assume comfort is permanent. You step back into the street, the sun high enough now to warm stone and skin alike. Work hums around you, the city moving in a rhythm you've only just begun to sense. Survival in Rome isn't just about avoiding carts or finding water, it's about understanding who does what and where you fit. You wander, loaf in hand, noticing the variety of laborers swarming the city like ants. Builders are first, hauling timber, mixing mortar, shouting orders. You dodge a falling plank, heart skipping, and realize that construction here is as much about spectacle as function. The mainstream historical fact settles into your mind: slavery underpins almost every trade. Skilled and unskilled, slaves handle the heavy lifting, literally and figuratively, while free citizens oversee, negotiate, and profit. You glimpse a master pointing directions while a dozen men strain under beams, and the imbalance is unmistakable. Street vendors pitch their wares. One offers fish, another fruit, another scraps of cloth. You notice the sharp contrast in quality. Some goods clearly meant for the wealthy, some for the masses scraping by. The quirky detail that catches your attention is that some vendors employ clever tricks to sell their produce: weights slightly off, extra coin demanded, even shameless storytelling about magical health benefits. A man argues, gesturing at a tomato. You nod vaguely, buying nothing. You've learned your lesson about caution. As you continue, you notice the clear social hierarchy etched into everything. Patricians pass in sleek chariots, their slaves fanning them or holding parasols. They move slowly, deliberately, as if the city bends to their presence. Plebeians and laborers adjust, stepping aside without comment. You, an outsider, are barely noticed unless you block a path. Scholars still argue whether these distinctions were rigid or more fluid than traditionally described, but for survival today, the rules are obvious: know your place, move carefully, and watch for subtle signs of power. The noise is relentless. Hammers, shouts, carts, horses, dogs. Your senses are sharp now, tuned to recognize the potential dangers. You spot a man tripping another for sport, another trying to pickpocket distracted citizens. Crime here isn't occasional, it's woven into the daily tapestry. The quirky detail: sometimes victims join in the chaos with theatrical gestures, as if performing for amusement or to shame the offender. You avoid looking too long, keeping a low profile. You see slaves moving in disciplined lines, carrying water jars or timber. One drops a load, but instead of punishment, a master laughs, part amusement, part calculation. The hierarchy is rigid but strangely flexible depending on circumstance. You note that every person's survival depends as much on awareness as strength or skill. You wander past workshops. Blacksmiths hammer metal, sending sparks flying. Cobblers' hammers beat leather, shaping sandals for citizens hurrying past. You smell molten metal, wet clay, and smoke. The quirky detail that settles in is that some workshops double as homes. Families live literally on top of their trade, mixing business with life in ways that seem unimaginable. You carefully skirt a stack of pottery balanced precariously on a balcony, grateful that gravity and luck are on your side today. You watch a group of scribes and clerks discussing contracts. Their gestures are precise, ink-stained fingers moving deftly across wax tablets. Documentation is rare in most of the world, but here it matters. Survival depends on your obligations, debts, and obligations. You realize quickly that social status is more than class, it's paperwork, witnesses, and visibility. The city's hierarchy touches everything. Who gets water first? Who finds shade? Who's ignored or noticed? Slaves navigate carefully, laborers bargain silently, and wealthy citizens flaunt their privilege with near impunity. You sense that survival depends on reading these currents as much as avoiding physical harm. You pause near a corner, loaf under your arm, absorbing the bustle. The street is relentless, but your awareness has sharpened. You've noticed the subtle power shifts, the risks embedded in every interaction, the constant dance of survival and status. Rome doesn't offer mercy. It offers opportunity, if you're attentive. As you walk on, weaving between laborers, merchants, and citizens, you realize that understanding the city's social hierarchy may be as vital as knowing where to find water or how to avoid carts. Life here is structured around observation, quick thinking, and the ability to adapt without attracting attention. Every glance, every gesture, every choice of path is a decision in the game of survival. You continue forward, slowly, deliberately, carrying lessons in observation, awareness, and the subtle power dynamics that will guide your next moves through this crowded, dangerous, endlessly alive city. The sun climbs higher, spilling light across the uneven rooftops and bouncing off pale stone, warming the street and making the air shimmer. You feel it on your skin, heavier now, carrying with it the scent of dust, bread, and sweat. Rome doesn't forgive distraction, and the heat is a reminder, survival requires constant attention. You pause, noticing how the city seems almost alive, pulsing with noise, movement, and tiny hazards. Ahead, a small plaza opens, and the crowd thickens. Merchants call out, hawking olives, fish, wine, and scraps of cloth. Carts jostle each other as drivers argue loudly, their voices mingling with children laughing, dogs barking, and the occasional clang of a dropped utensil. The mainstream historical fact drifts into your mind. Rome is bustling, densely packed, and astonishingly interconnected. Over 1 million people live here at the city's height, and infrastructure struggles to keep up with daily life. The result is controlled chaos, a daily balancing act where awareness is survival. You move carefully through the crowd, loaf in hand, noticing oddities that make the city memorable. One vendor juggles figs while simultaneously arguing with a customer. Another balances a basket of eggs on his head, stepping backwards as if the world around him were nothing but a stage for his precarious performance. You pause, half amused, half awed. These little quirks, seemingly trivial, remind you that life in Rome is messy, chaotic, and often absurd. You notice the way people signal each other, using gestures, voice, and eye contact. Everything is coded. A glance can warn of danger. A hand gesture can indicate an ally. You're not sure you've mastered the language of the street yet, but you're trying. Scholars still argue whether Roman social cues were standardized or more fluid, but for now, it doesn't matter. You keep your head down, moving with the flow. Somewhere in the crowd, a child drops a jar of water. The crash startles you. Adults barely glance. You realize quickly that accidents are normal, expected even. Life moves on. You step around the shards carefully, noting that your modern instinct to intervene would be considered odd here. Survival means knowing when to act and when to stay quiet. A sudden smell hits you. Smoke, stronger and more acrid than the faint wood burning earlier. You glance up to see a small fire near a corner workshop. Sparks leap toward a pile of dry reeds. People shout, some grab buckets, others stand frozen. You recognize immediately that fire in Rome is a constant, ever-present threat. The quirky detail. The city has fire brigades, yes, but they operate more like paid contractors than a civic service. Their efficiency depends on who can afford them and how quickly neighbors react. You step back, loaf clutched tightly, and let the scene unfold without involvement. The plaza begins to thin as you move toward a quieter street, but tension remains. A street musician plays a small lyre, oblivious to the chaos, while nearby, a vendor mends a basket with deft fingers. Life and danger coexist here seamlessly. You notice that even small, ordinary actions, like carrying a basket or playing music, require awareness. A single misstep could cause injury, embarrassment, or worse. The city's smells mix constantly: roasted grain, sweat, olive oil, damp stone. You breathe carefully, aware that the olfactory assault is part of the learning curve. A dog trots past, tail high, carrying a scrap of meat, and disappears into an alley. You follow instinct, stepping aside, heart quickened. Rome has a rhythm, and you're beginning to feel its pulse. You come across a small shrine tucked between two buildings. It's barely noticeable unless you look closely. A carved stone, offerings of grain, a flickering oil lamp. Romans honor household gods, Lares, believing they protect the street and its residents. You touch the edge of the stone lightly, mimicking the gesture around you. Superstition is pervasive, a layer of protection you barely understand but respect. As you move on, the day's lessons accumulate. Every corner carries a potential hazard. Every person you pass has a story, a purpose, a hierarchy. Every sound signals life, movement, or risk. You realize that surviving a day in Rome requires not just physical awareness, but mental alertness, a constant calibration of observation, patience, and subtle interaction. The street narrows again, sun bouncing off walls, heat radiating from the stone beneath your feet. You feel fatigue creeping in, but awareness keeps you upright, alert. Rome tests you continuously, asking you to notice everything, interpret every signal, and move carefully without drawing attention. And as you continue walking, loaf clutched under your arm, you feel the rhythm of the city settle in, like a heartbeat you're learning to synchronize with. The afternoon sun beats down relentlessly now, bouncing off stone walls and scorching the narrow alleys. You feel it clinging to your skin, sticky and warm, but you keep moving, loaf in hand, mind alert. Heat changes everything here. It makes stone expand, wood warp, and tempers flare. The city seems alive in a slightly hostile way, reminding you that even the environment is an opponent you can't ignore. You step into a bustling marketplace. Stalls are packed so tightly that brushing past someone feels inevitable. Fish glisten on crushed ice, or what passes for ice, fragrant and intimidating. Merchants call out in a mix of commands, insults, and exaggerated promises about freshness. The mainstream historical fact rises up again. Rome's economy thrives on trade, both local and imported, meaning the city depends on networks stretching hundreds of miles. This creates opportunity, yes, but also competition, deceit, and congestion that can turn deadly. You watch a merchant slice a fish with practiced hands. The odd detail catches your attention. He sprinkles a mixture of garum and vinegar over the fish, claiming it preserves it longer and improves the flavor. The smell hits you first, sharp and penetrating, making you wrinkle your nose. You're learning that Roman food culture is bold, fragrant, and sometimes alarming to modern senses. Children dart around the stalls, negotiating for scraps, coins clutched tightly. One trips, sending a small basket rolling into the crowd. No one stops. Survival here teaches self-reliance early. You step carefully to avoid stepping on it, feeling your heart race for a moment before moving on. Scholars still argue whether the bustling, chaotic markets contributed more to economic innovation or public health disasters. Observing the crowd, you can't help but see evidence for both. A vendor hawks wool tunics, their colors faded, but the patterns intricate. You note how even ordinary clothing marks status, quality of fabric, color vibrancy, and condition matter. You adjust your pace, aware that being misread as wealthy or destitute could influence how people treat you. Small signals are powerful here, subtle yet influential. A sudden shout diverts your attention. Two men argue over a broken crate. The crowd thickens briefly as bystanders weigh in, some cheering, some jeering. You step aside instinctively. Conflict is part theater, part survival. Observing without engaging is the safest path. You notice the subtle gestures that indicate who is likely to escalate and who will back down. You catch a whiff of smoke and look up. A rooftop fire is being doused with buckets passed hand to hand. Sparks still leap dangerously, and a thin crowd of spectators murmurs rather than intervenes. Quirky detail. Fire in Rome is constant, but the response is improvisational, a mix of skill, luck, and social negotiation. You keep your distance, loaf secure, breathing shallowly. Nearby, a man sells small clay figurines. You pause, curious, but the oddness strikes you. Some of the figures depict gods in very human, even ridiculous scenarios: drinking, arguing, lounging. Humor and devotion coexist. Romans laugh at their deities, but reverence persists. You smile faintly, realizing that even belief here is flexible, pragmatic. You maneuver past carts carrying grain, wine, and wood. Horses snort and paw impatiently. Drivers shout, waving hands, negotiating passage with anyone who looks like they might object. The city's chaos is relentless, yet structured in its own strange logic. Every person, animal, and object is part of a complex choreography that repeats daily. A boy jostles past you with a small basket of figs, nearly spilling it on your loaf. He mutters an apology and disappears into the crowd. You notice that politeness exists, but only as a tool. It smooths transactions, prevents escalation. Survival here isn't about morality, it's about strategy and awareness. As you leave the market behind, the sun casting long, sharp shadows across the streets, you notice fatigue settling in. Your muscles ache slightly, your skin sticky, and yet you feel more attuned. You're learning the city's rhythm, its hazards, and its tiny, strange joys. Even in chaos, patterns emerge. The streets narrow again. A faint smell of herbs drifts from a small courtyard. Children chase a dog, the chaos quiet and playful. You step lightly, loaf under arm, reflecting on the lessons of the marketplace: awareness, patience, timing, and respect for the subtle rules that govern life here. In Rome, survival isn't heroic, it's attentive, quiet, and deliberate. You wander further, sun now at its zenith, warming every surface and casting sharp shadows across the streets. Fatigue brushes at your shoulders, but Rome doesn't pause for tired travelers. You've learned to move with purpose, loaf tucked securely under one arm, eyes scanning for hazards and opportunities alike. Each corner holds a potential story, a sudden danger, or a curious oddity waiting to be noticed. The street opens onto a small temple, its stone steps worn smooth by countless feet. A priest stands near the entrance, offering incense to those who pause. You step carefully, loaf still clutched, observing the ritual from a safe distance. The mainstream historical fact settles gently in your mind. Religion in Rome isn't just belief, it's civic, practical, and woven into every aspect of life. Daily devotion, public festivals, and small shrines guide both the city's moral and social order. Curious, you linger a moment. The quirky detail emerges. One small altar shows a carving of Mercury, god of commerce, depicted carrying an absurdly oversized purse, almost as if mocking the wealthy merchants you passed earlier. Humor mingles with devotion here, and Romans seem entirely comfortable laughing at the divine while still revering it. You inhale faint incense smoke, letting it drift past your nose and eyes, relaxing your shoulders slightly. A sudden shout jolts you, children chasing a stray dog into the temple courtyard. Adults mutter warnings but do not intervene. Chaos and order coexist in perfect balance here. A slip, a misstep, or a misread gesture could result in injury or embarrassment, but mostly, life moves on. Scholars still argue whether public religious spaces were more about spiritual guidance or social control. You shrug internally. Right now, survival is all about awareness, not debate. Moving past the temple, you notice an alleyway, narrow and shadowed. The air is cooler here, a faint relief from the glaring sun. You step lightly, loaf pressed to your side, and observe the smaller trades hidden in side streets: a cobbler hammering leather, a potter shaping clay on a rudimentary wheel, and a young boy sweeping fallen scraps. The city's undercurrent is here, quieter than the main thoroughfares but just as vital. A vendor leans out of a window above, tossing down small coins for someone below. The quirky detail hits again. Sometimes these interactions are playful, almost game-like, with misthrown coins bouncing unpredictably. It's a small theater of risk and reward, a tiny drama that occupies the attention of everyone involved. You watch carefully, appreciating the subtle rules of engagement. You step into the shade of another insula. The walls are blackened with soot from countless fires, and the stairwell is narrow, crowded with people moving up and down. You notice how Romans tolerate close quarters with practiced patience. Privacy is minimal, but observation is maximal. Survival in these buildings isn't about space, it's about negotiation, awareness, and timing. A man lumbers past, carrying a heavy basket of grain. His movements are careful but strained. You notice another person slip slightly on the uneven stones, barely catching themselves. You inhale slowly, learning to anticipate hazards before they appear. Every stumble, spill, or fall is a reminder. Rome rewards attentiveness more than speed or strength. You round a corner and enter a small plaza dominated by a fountain. Water trickles lazily, birds flutter nearby. People gather, resting briefly in the shade, sharing food, gossip, or simple respite from the sun. The mainstream historical fact drifts back. Fountains and public water sources are not only for hydration, they are social nodes, essential to urban life and civic structure. Quirky details abound. A man balances a chicken on his shoulder, muttering directions to it like a general. A child chases a rolling barrel of cabbage. Life here is absurd, chaotic, yet structured by unspoken rules. You feel the rhythm again, the pulse of the city teaching you how to move, when to pause, and what to observe. You tuck your loaf under your arm more securely. Hunger is quieted, thirst is manageable, awareness is sharp. Each street, each corner, each shadowed alley is now a lesson etched into your memory. Survival in Rome isn't about heroics, it's about attention, subtlety, and constant adaptation. You step out of the plaza, letting the noise and heat wash over you, carrying the rhythm of the city with you as your next challenge looms in the afternoon sun. The sun dips slightly toward late afternoon, softening the glare but not the heat. You feel your energy wane, muscles subtly protesting, yet Rome has no mercy for fatigue. Survival requires not just awareness, but rhythm, moving with the flow of the city rather than against it. You adjust your pace, loaf still clutched, eyes darting to scan for hazards, commerce, and opportunity. A cluster of artisans catches your attention. A blacksmith hammers glowing metal, sparks leaping like tiny fireflies. A potter shapes clay with wet, expert hands. A leatherworker taps rhythmically on stretched hides. The mainstream historical fact that surfaces here is that Roman craftsmanship is highly specialized. Many trades rely on decades of apprenticeship, and the quality of your labor can define social status, profit, or even survival. You notice this as you step carefully past each workspace. Quirky detail. Some workshops double as living spaces, with families sleeping among raw materials and half-finished products. You imagine the challenges of raising children while molten metal or wet clay fills every corner. The air smells thick with smoke, dust, and wet earth, an olfactory reminder that life here is messy, immediate, and tactile. A sudden shout breaks your focus. Two men argue over a dropped crate of vegetables. The crowd around them watches, some cheering, some jeering. You sidestep carefully. Conflict is a constant, but often performative. Scholars still argue whether public disputes like these were primarily social theater, a means of enforcing informal justice, or genuine danger. You don't have time for debate. You simply stay aware, moving quietly to avoid entanglement. Nearby, a small boy chases a stray dog, laughter ringing out. He collides with a fruit stall, sending figs rolling across the stones. The vendor yells, but only in exasperation, not anger. The quirky detail hits you. Chaos here is normalized. Adults and children alike negotiate disorder constantly, knowing that a stumble rarely ends the day, but inattention could. You duck past the mess, loaf tucked under your arm, silent and careful. You notice the hierarchy etched into daily life. Wealthier citizens glide past in fine tunics, slaves attending, fanning, or carrying their possessions. Laborers bend under heavy loads, sweat dripping, voices low or shouting as needed. You understand that status dictates space, opportunity, and attention. Misstep in observation, and you could collide with both social and physical hazards. A water carrier passes, balancing jars expertly on a yoke. The liquid sloshes dangerously close to tipping. You instinctively shift to give him room, realizing that a single mistake could cause injury or conflict. You've learned that awareness and caution are as vital as strength in a city built of stone, clay, and human ambition. A vendor nearby hawks small trinkets, clay figurines, necklaces of polished stones, and charms for luck. Quirky detail. Some items depict gods in exaggeratedly human scenarios, laughing, arguing, even drinking. Humor and devotion coexist seamlessly. You smile faintly, appreciating this mix of reverence and absurdity. You pass a narrow alley where shadows deepen. Children chase one another, weaving past barrels and carts. A dog barks from the corner. You navigate carefully, noting every subtle shift in movement. The mainstream historical fact returns. Romans live in close quarters, densely packed neighborhoods where observation and timing dictate daily survival. One false step could mean injury, humiliation, or worse. The air smells of roasted grain, sweat, and smoke, thick and tangible. You breathe carefully, letting the sensory overload teach you. Rome is not a place for distraction. It's a city of constant negotiation, space, opportunity, and survival entwined in every step, glance, and breath. Exiting the alley, the sun softer now, shadows longer, you feel a quiet rhythm settle in. Each step, each observation, each minor hazard navigated becomes part of a growing understanding. In Rome, survival isn't about heroics. It's about constant attentiveness, small adaptations, and blending seamlessly into the flow of the city. The late afternoon sun softens, throwing long shadows across the streets and alleys. Heat still lingers, clinging to your skin, but there's a subtle relief now, a gentle reminder that time is passing, and the city's rhythm shifts slightly with the fading light. You carry your loaf under one arm, walking with purpose yet observing everything, aware that even in calmer moments, hazards and curiosities abound. A small square opens before you. Merchants pack up goods, carts creak, and laborers finish heavy tasks, wiping sweat from foreheads. The mainstream historical fact nudges into your awareness. Labor in Rome is unrelenting. Most citizens rise before dawn and work until dusk, whether in shops, workshops, construction sites, or markets. Fatigue is a constant companion, and only careful observation, stamina, and routine keep you functional. You notice a peculiar sight. A man demonstrates a toy for children, a small wooden horse with movable legs. The crowd of kids laughs, pointing and squealing. The quirky detail sticks. Even in the midst of survival and labor, Romans cherish small entertainment. Play, humor, and distraction are as much a part of city life as bread, water, and work. You pause for a second, watching, and let a faint smile escape. Nearby, a vendor sweeps spilled grain from the street into a pile. You step around it, loaf still secure. Scholars still argue whether urban hygiene efforts, such as street sweeping and sewage channels, actually reduced disease or merely masked it. From your perspective, it's more about constant adaptation. You navigate the streets like a moving puzzle, aware that slips, collisions, or inattentiveness have consequences. A sudden shout draws your attention. Two men argue over a crate of fish, their voices rising as onlookers gather. You sidestep again, realizing conflict is normalized here. Chaos is not avoided but managed. Observation is your shield. You notice the subtle cues that predict escalation: posture, tone, gestures. Learning these tiny signals is as crucial as avoiding a falling cart or a burning hearth. You turn down a quieter side street. The temperature drops slightly, shaded by overhanging balconies. Children chase one another around barrels and carts, laughter and shouting blending with distant clanging from workshops. The odd detail registers. This is training, too. Roman children learn coordination, observation, and social negotiation as they play. Survival skills are embedded in the fabric of daily life from a young age. A small shrine tucked between buildings catches your eye. Offerings of grain, wine, and small figurines sit on a carved stone. You touch the edge lightly, observing the ritual without participating. Religion here is intertwined with daily life, offering protection, structure, and social cohesion. Even small gestures can signal respect or knowledge of local customs, subtle tools for navigating the city. Further along, the smells of bread, roasting meat, and fermenting wine mingle in a complex, almost overwhelming bouquet. You inhale carefully, letting your senses map the surroundings. Awareness in Rome is multi-layered: visual, auditory, olfactory, and social. One false perception can have consequences, whether stepping into a dispute, knocking over a cart, or offending a passerby. You pause briefly, loaf tucked close, muscles tired but mind alert. The city hums around you, a constant pulse of labor, commerce, and chaos. Observing patterns, learning the rhythm, and noting quirky habits, children's games, vendor antics, small superstitions, has become part of survival. Rome doesn't forgive ignorance, but it rewards attentiveness and adaptation. Moving onward, you carry the lessons with you. Observe, anticipate, blend, adapt. Each step through the streets, each interaction or avoided hazard, builds a growing understanding. Life in Rome is a tapestry of hazards, small joys, and constant negotiation. Your body is weary, but your awareness sharpens as you weave deeper into the city's intricate web. Evening begins to descend, softening the harsh sunlight into golden shafts that cut through narrow alleys. The heat lingers in the stone, radiating warmth into your skin, but the fading light brings relief. You adjust your loaf under one arm, stepping carefully, senses alert. Rome doesn't pause for sunset, and neither do its hazards or hidden quirks. You enter a busier thoroughfare, merchants finishing up for the day, children still darting around, dogs weaving through legs. The mainstream historical fact surfaces again. Commerce in Rome operates in cycles, tied to sunlight, tides, and social routine. Markets empty gradually, and the ebb and flow of people and goods is predictable if you know what to watch. Observation, timing, and anticipation are as essential as speed or strength. Your attention is caught by a curious spectacle. A man juggles small loaves while his child balances on one foot nearby, trying to mimic him. The quirky detail resonates. Skill, play, and survival are intertwined here. Even mundane acts, like carrying bread or entertaining a child, become small performances that teach agility, coordination, and attention. You step aside, smiling faintly, impressed by the combination of precision and audacity. A cart rumbles past, spilling a few ceramic vessels onto the stones. You instinctively pivot, loaf pressed close, noticing subtle gestures from nearby citizens signaling awareness or warning. Scholars still argue whether the chaos of streets was inherently dangerous or a carefully managed ecosystem of social interaction. Either way, you've learned to read the cues: where people look, how they move, and when to follow the flow versus stand aside. You pass a small tavern, smoke curling from its chimney. The smell of roasting meat and fermenting wine draws your attention. Inside, laborers gather to rest, laugh, and swap stories. Even in brief pauses, observation remains key. Disputes flare easily, accidental collisions with tables or patrons could escalate. You smile at a humorous exchange over spilled wine, noting how Romans use social skill and humor as armor as much as swords or hands. A stray dog darts between legs, chasing a rolling basket. You step lightly, careful not to stumble. The odd detail: animals are part of the city's choreography. Dogs, chickens, and even birds navigate streets as skillfully as humans, and sometimes with far less patience. Awareness includes them. One misstep could be painful or messy. You pause near a small fountain. Water trickles into a stone basin, birds fluttering to drink. People gather, chatting quietly or washing hands, children dipping toes. Public fountains are not only hydration points but social nodes. Observation here teaches patterns of behavior, social hierarchy, and micro-hazards. You watch carefully, noting how individuals interact with space and each other. A sudden shout breaks your focus. A minor scuffle between two boys ends quickly as an adult intervenes. You move on, noting the unspoken rules. Interference is selective, authority respected, chaos tolerated within bounds. Survival here isn't about control, it's about observation, anticipation, and knowing when to act or step aside. The smells of the street deepen as night approaches. roasted grain, fermenting wine, the lingering scent of sweat and stone. You inhale slowly, absorbing cues. Life in Rome blends labor, leisure, danger, and absurdity into one continuous performance. You've learned to navigate it all with loaf in hand, eyes alert, steps cautious but confident. As shadows stretch longer, you feel a rhythm settle in. The city hums, teeming with movement yet predictable in its cycles. Each street, alley, and plaza you traverse teaches survival, awareness, and subtle social navigation. Rome isn't forgiving, but it rewards attentiveness, curiosity, and adaptability. You step forward, ready to face the approaching evening, carrying both fatigue and a growing mastery of observation. Night creeps in, softening the harsh edges of the city. The sun has set, leaving only a golden afterglow on the horizon, and shadows stretch long across the stone streets. The heat has eased slightly, replaced by a cooler, almost eerie calm. You clutch your loaf a little tighter, senses alert, moving carefully through the narrowing streets. Rome is quieter now, but danger doesn't vanish, it simply changes shape. You pass dimly lit taverns, flickering oil lamps spilling soft light onto uneven streets. The mainstream historical fact drifts in. Night in Rome was dangerous for those unprepared. Criminals, stray animals, and poorly lit areas posed serious risks. Most Romans stayed home or in groups, relying on vigilance and the occasional night watch. You adjust your pace, blending into the sparse crowd, footsteps quiet, eyes scanning the alleys. A peculiar sight captures your attention. A small group of youths perform acrobatics on crates and barrels, laughing as they tumble and roll. The quirky detail strikes you. Even at night, Romans find space for play and practice skill. Acrobatics, games, and physical challenges are woven into survival training, unacknowledged yet vital for coordination and reflexes. You watch for a moment, noting balance, timing, and crowd reactions before stepping on. A sudden shout pierces the calm, a minor scuffle outside a shuttered workshop. You duck instinctively, pressing against the wall, loaf secure. Scholars still argue whether late-night scuffles were acts of criminal intent, drunken mischief, or social policing. Observation remains your best defense. You notice subtle signals. Stance, tone, gestures, crowd reactions, all warning signs of escalation. You let the event unfold, invisible and cautious. The air smells of smoke, damp stone, and roasted meat from late-night taverns. Animals scurry unseen, their tiny movements audible if you pay close attention. You pause near a dark alley, listening to distant chatter and the soft clatter of wheels on cobblestones. Every sound is a clue, every shadow a potential hazard. Rome at night is alive in a different rhythm, demanding vigilance and patience. A small shrine glows faintly under the last rays of sunlight. Candles flicker, casting shadows across stone carvings. You step close, mimicking the gestures you observed earlier. The odd detail is comforting. Superstition and ritual persist even as darkness falls, offering guidance and a subtle sense of protection. You realize that respect for these customs can smooth interactions and avoid unwanted attention. You move along quieter streets, aware of your surroundings, loose stones, stray dogs, and the occasional stumbling passerby. Each step demands attention, blending caution with fluid motion. Survival at this hour isn't about speed, it's about anticipation, subtle observation, and respecting the city's nocturnal rhythms. Somewhere nearby, a lone musician strums a lyre softly, the melody weaving through the narrow streets. Oddly, it calms you, reminding you that beauty exists even in chaos. The quirky detail lingers. Romans incorporate art, humor, and sound into daily life in ways that teach rhythm, patience, and attention. You allow the faint music to guide your steps, easing your tension while keeping your wits sharp. You round a corner into a small courtyard, the stones cool underfoot. Shadows stretch long and soft, the city quieter now yet still alive with subtle motion. Observation has taught you the value of patience, anticipation, and silent awareness. Rome may not forgive distraction, but it rewards those who respect its rhythms, oddities, and hidden lessons. With each step, your understanding deepens. Vigilance, adaptation, and careful attention are as vital as strength or speed. Night in Rome is dangerous, but not insurmountable. You feel a quiet satisfaction in having navigated this far. Loaf secure, senses tuned, mind alert yet relaxed in the city's soft twilight pulse. The city grows quieter as darkness settles fully, street lamps flickering weakly, casting dancing shadows across the uneven cobblestones. You walk slowly, loaf under your arm, senses alert, though fatigue brushes at your limbs. Rome at night is a different city, less chaotic, but no less alive. You hear the soft shuffle of feet, the distant bark of dogs, the faint murmur of conversations behind closed doors. Awareness is still your most vital companion. You pass a tavern spilling light and laughter onto the street. Patrons drink, argue, and gesture animatedly, voices bouncing off the walls. The mainstream historical fact drifts to mind. Night in Rome was often reserved for socialization among certain classes, but also for subtle dangers, robbery, accidents, or disputes over territory. The evening is a lesson in balance. Presence without attention invites risk, yet caution alone isolates you from the city's rhythm. A subtle quirk catches your eye. A man balances a tray of wine cups, weaving through tables, slipping slightly but catching himself with practiced grace. Oddly, it mirrors your own navigation through the streets: balance, timing, observation. You smile faintly, noting that even minor tasks in Rome require constant vigilance, skill, and awareness. You move on, slipping into quieter streets. Shadows stretch across walls, and the faint scent of herbs, wood smoke, and roasted grain fills the air. A stray cat slinks along a ledge above, tail flicking, eyes glinting in lamplight. Scholars still debate how much Roman urban wildlife affected daily life: disease, theft of food, or companionship, but for you, it's another cue. Observation extends to every moving thing, not just humans. A small shrine glows faintly, flickering candles illuminating carved figures. You pause, loaf pressed under your arm, and mimic the respectful gestures you've learned. Religion, superstition, and ritual punctuate the city's life, offering subtle guidance and social signals. Odd detail. Some of the carvings depict gods in absurdly human predicaments, reminding you that humor and reverence coexist seamlessly here. You walk past a narrow alley where children play quietly, chasing shadows and stones. The street is dim, yet alive. You realize that play itself is a form of training: agility, observation, and negotiation skills embedded from a young age. Even the smallest details, the trajectory of a thrown stone, the placement of a foot, a fleeting glance, teach lessons crucial to daily survival. The air grows cooler as night deepens. You sense fatigue pressing in, muscles heavy, but your mind is alert, finely tuned to the city's subtleties. Every footstep, every sound, every shadow teaches something: where danger hides, where opportunity exists, and how to navigate the complex web of human and animal movement. Finally, you reach a quiet corner, the faint gurgle of water from a distant fountain soothing. You pause, loaf still secure, allowing your breath to settle. The chaos, the absurdities, the hierarchy, and the subtle lessons of Rome have seeped in. You've navigated hazards, observed social currents, and absorbed odd, memorable details. Survival here isn't heroic, it's about attention, adaptability, and learning the rhythm of a city that never truly sleeps. As you settle in the shadowed street, the night enfolds you softly. The city hums, alive yet distant, teaching that even in its chaos, patterns emerge. You feel the satisfaction of having moved with awareness, the subtle triumph of observation, and the quiet comfort that comes with understanding a world both absurd and perilous. Now, let's ease into the soft wind down. The streets are nearly empty, the bustle replaced by a gentle hush. You lean against a cool stone wall, the loaf long forgotten at your side, and inhale the city's quiet rhythm. The air carries the faint scent of herbs, lingering smoke, and warm stone, wrapping around you like a soft blanket. Night in Rome has its own heartbeat, steady, subtle, and surprisingly comforting once you've learned to listen. You notice small details you might have missed earlier: a flickering lamp casting playful shadows, a cat curling atop a ledge, the slow ripple of water in a fountain. Each tiny motion reminds you that life continues, gentle and intricate, even when the chaos has faded. The city breathes around you, a living tapestry stitched from millions of small actions, accidents, and rituals. Your muscles relax, your mind slows. You reflect on the lessons of the day: observation, timing, awareness, and subtle adaptation. Rome may have been relentless, chaotic, and absurd, but it has also taught patience, attentiveness, and the strange joy of noticing odd details in everyday life. You realize that even in danger, there is beauty, humor, and rhythm waiting to be discovered. The cool night wind brushes your skin softly, carrying the faint scent of distant flowers and cooking fires. You close your eyes briefly, letting the city's pulse lull your thoughts. Each sound, shadow, and flicker becomes part of a gentle symphony, a reminder that being present, even quietly, is a kind of mastery. Take a deep breath. Feel the warmth of the stones beneath your feet, the soft hum of life continuing around you. You've moved carefully, observed sharply, and learned the rhythms of a world both strange and alive. Rome at night, chaotic or calm, leaves a mark, a quiet awareness, a gentle curiosity, and a lingering sense of wonder. Now, as you settle, imagine yourself breathing with the city, its soft rhythm echoing in your chest. The lessons, the quirks, the hazards, and the laughter of a long day fade into a calm understanding. Let your body sink into the gentle stillness, and your mind drift along with the warm, quiet pulse of life in ancient Rome. Sweet dreams.